The sun hovered low, casting a golden hue over our little corner of suburbia. The air was crisp, not cold, just enough to remind us that summer had finally folded into autumn. Leaves rustled with a kind of whispering urgency, skittering across the sidewalks and settling into the yards in the most annoyingly picturesque way. It was a peaceful neighborhood, or so one might think at first glance. I liked to sit on the porch after work, nursing the calm that the end of the day offered. My dog Max, a sprightly golden retriever with a penchant for chasing shadows, lay sprawled beside me, his tail occasionally thumping against the wooden planks. He was a dog of few words, barking only when the moment truly called for it. Max understood the art of silence. But silence was a concept foreign to some Karen. Our HOA president had a voice that never tired, an unending stream of grievances spilling into the atmosphere. Her presence, a cloud of discontent, loomed large over our neighborhood. She was a maestro of minutiae, orchestrating a symphony of complaints that reverberated through our cul-de-sac. Her demands were as consistent as the seasons, shifting only in subject and severity. Her first assault was subtle. A note slipped under my door like a secret threat. "Muzzle your dog." It read the letters sharp and precise, as if they too were carved from her unyielding resolve. I wondered if she had hired a calligrapher, or if it was just an extension of her relentless control over our small world. Max, resting his head on my foot, seemed unfazed, as if to say, "Don't worry, she's just noise." And she was clanging pots in the kitchen, a broken bell in a forgotten church. Her next advance was more direct, crossing paths. As I was walking, Max, her eyes narrowed, lips drawn thin like she was holding back a world of words. She said the bare minimum, each word dropping like a stone into the stillness between us. Her demands were clear, her expectations written in the air. I responded with calm. A nod. A smile, the kind of pacifying gestures that spoke louder than words. I wasn't about to engage in a battle of wills. Not over something as trivial as a bark. Life had taught me that noise fades, but the quiet is what lingers. Max, oblivious to the tension pressed against my leg, sensing my steadiness. Karen's pettiness was as predictable as the tides. Her attempts to rattle me were almost admirable in their persistence, but I had learned to see through her, to navigate the waters of her discontent without getting swept up in them. My resolve was my raft, keeping me steady while storms brewed around us. In the days that followed, I watched the neighborhood with a kind of detached amusement. Karen's shadow flickered across windows, her presence a constant reminder of the undercurrent of discord she so effortlessly generated. To others, she was an irritant, but to me she was a study in human behavior, a reminder of what happens when control becomes an obsession. As the days shortened and the nights grew cooler, I knew her next move was inevitable. Her demands would escalate. They always did. But I was ready, not with retaliation, but with the resilience that Max and I had cultivated. The calm before the storm was a familiar blanket, and I wrapped it around me, waiting for whatever came next. Max stirred beside me, his eyes meeting mine as if to say, "We've got this," and I believed him. The sun poured down mercilessly as the morning unfolded, its light seeping into every corner of the neighborhood. Our street seemed quieter than usual, a kind of uneasy calm that only hinted at the storm beneath the surface. I knew it was just a matter of time before Karen's next move. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that felt like the buildup before a thunderstorm. The grass looked greener, the birds quieter, and even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't long before the raven-haired protagonist of our little drama made her entrance. Karen, with her meticulously pressed blouse and a clipboard that seemed an extension of her very being, was on the prowl. Her heels clicked against the pavement with precision, each step a declaration of her relentless determination. The clipboard was a weapon, her expression a loaded pistol. She was a force of nature, albeit one that left chaos rather than growth in her wake. Her eyes scanned the neighborhood with the intensity of a predator seeking prey. It started with the letters disguised as polite notices. They were in fact cryptic warnings. Your lawn exceeds regulation height. One read another, unauthorized garden gnome placement. Each citation more absurd than the last, each delivered with the cold efficiency of a bureaucratic machine. My dog, a generally unassuming creature of habit and gentle demeanor, seemed to be their primary focus. Perhaps he represented the freedom she could neither understand nor control. Karen's influence extended beyond the written word. The whispers began. Shortly after weaving through the neighborhood like an insidious vine, gossip spread with a vigor that rivaled the most resilient of weeds. I could almost hear the quiet murmurs, tickling the edges of my consciousness as if they were sentient beings intent on sowing discord. Did you hear about the dog? One neighbor would say, eyes darting about like a deer in headlights, only to be consumed by the shadow of Karen's disapproval. I heard it barks all night. Another would respond, their voice carrying the weight of fabricated truth. I watched from the sidelines, a reluctant participant in this unfolding drama. My role was simple: endure and observe. The irony was not lost on me. Here I was caught in the web of an HOA saga orchestrated by a woman whose life seemed defined by the control she wielded over others. It was a dance of power and submission, a ballet performed on the stage of suburban monotony. I knew I had to act to record the tempest that was Karen for what it truly was. An afternoon of her tirades captured in digital permanence, waiting for the right moment to be unveiled. Her voice, shrill and commanding, had become an anthem of sorts, a testament to her reign of terror. In the midst of this chaos, I found clarity. Her screams, once grating, became a symphony of desperation. It was then that I understood Karen didn't just want control, she needed it. And in that need, she had exposed her greatest vulnerability. The police were a phone call away, the recording a clear testament to the saga that unfolded in the shadow of manicured lawns. The stage was set for the next act, and as I prepared for the coming confrontation, I felt a calm resolve settle within me. The storm was far from over, but in the eye of the hurricane, I had found my peace. The sun descended into an amber horizon, casting long shadows over the neighborhood where civility wore a thin veil. The HOA's Queen Bee Karen had been the thorn in my side, an immovable fixture of pettiness. Her demand to muzzle Max, my cheerful, tail-wagging golden retriever, wasn't just an affront. It was an assault on my sanctuary. Her shrill commands resonated with every bark Max delighted in, and in a neighborhood bound by double standards. Her complaints were gospel. I had learned long ago to fight battles with a quiet resilience. Patience, like the slow erosion of stone by wind, had become my ally. As the day unfolded into dusk, I sat by my window, a cup of chamomile perched precariously in my hand, watching shadows dance across my living room. My phone resting on the table was more than just a device. It was my shield, my silent witness. Several weeks had passed since I started capturing the cacophony of Karen's wrath, her voice climbing octaves higher than any dog's bark could. Each recording was a piece of a strategic puzzle. Her screams, punctuated by threats and demands, were saved meticulously, a collection of evidence that told a story she didn't realize she was narrating. The community meetings were her stage, a place where she performed her grievances with theatrical flair. Yet my reticent nature belied a spine of steel. I knew when to strike, when to wield patience as a weapon, and now the time had come to let her own arrogance dig her demise. The final piece of my plan involved a subtle counter. On a serene Sunday morning, when the air was crisp with possibilities the moment arrived, the neighborhood buzzed with weekend routines, a symphony of lawn mowers and children's laughter. I had placed my recordings within reach, poised to reveal the irony of her tyranny, but irony had a flavor all its own. As I stepped out to greet the day, the police car parked a few houses down was unexpected. I watched expression calm as Karen's indignant posture collided with an officer's stoic demeanor. Her voice, once a siren call of authority, was suddenly muted. As the officer approached, I felt a strange kinship with the universe's timing. The conversation, though brief, carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid words, each one a pebble in the avalanche of her undoing. She had been the architect of her downfall, her own words. The bricks in a fragile empire. It was not satisfaction I felt as she retreated, the officer's card in her hand, but a quiet vindication. The neighborhood seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief, the tension evaporating like mist under the morning sun. The officer turned a nod in my direction, acknowledging the silent heroism of patience and preparedness. The recordings would remain tucked away, a testament to the power of patience and the irony that truth wields. As I returned to the tranquility of my home, Max curled up beside me, I realized that the real victory lay not in her public reckoning, but in the preservation of peace. Karen had demanded silence from a dog, and in doing so, she had unwittingly unleashed the power of her own voice, echoing in the corridors of justice she had so vehemently ignored. In the end, it was not the barking of a dog that disturbed the harmony of our neighborhood, but the roar of unchecked arrogance. And as the sun set once more, painting the sky with hues of finality, there was an undeniable serenity in knowing that sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all. The quiet before dawn lingered like a secret. Each morning seemed poised on the edge of revelation. With the world holding its breath, I sipped my coffee, gazing out the window, the air crisp with pending autumn. My faithful hound lay curled at my feet, his soft snores a comforting rhythm. He was unaware of the storm swirling around him, blissfully ignorant of the chaos that had begun to seep into the neighborhood like a slow, insidious fog. The previous evening, Karen's voice had fractured the stillness, a discordant symphony of demands and threats. Her tirade had been a crescendo of entitlement echoing off the walls of my home. My phone, innocuous in its silence, had captured every nuance, every demand for compliance, as if it were a witness to her unraveling. In the days that followed, whispers began to circulate among the neighbors like wind through the trees. The Jones Yard sale became an impromptu town meeting, the air thick with speculation. Karen's demands had always been a low hum, an undercurrent of the community's daily life. But now, her voice had become a clarion. Call her presence, a storm cloud on the horizon. Each glance from a neighbor held questions unspoken, but palpable. Did you hear? They seemed to ask, though none dared voice it. I met their gazes with a subtle nod, a shared understanding passing between us like a clandestine handshake. We were all players in the unfolding drama, unwilling conscripts in a tale of hubris and consequence. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, an unspoken pact of patience among us. Karen's influence waned like the dying light of day, her demands now shadows of their former power, but she was unaware, blinded by her own righteousness, as though she wore blinkers crafted from her own ego. The sun crept higher, casting long shadows that stretched across the worn grass and cracked pavement. I walked my dog our routine, a quiet rebellion against the storm. His leash was a lifeline tethering me to sanity as the world around us shifted. We moved in silence, the air heavy with the unsaid. As we turned a corner, Karen appeared, her movements sharp and frenetic, a marionette pulled by strings of her own making. Her eyes met mine, a challenge sparking between us. For a moment, the world held its breath. Time suspended on the brink of confrontation. Her mouth opened, but the words never came. They hung in the air like an unfinished symphony lost in the vastness of her own silence. The moment passed, a ripple in the continuum of our lives. I walked on my dog at my side, the echo of her unspoken words a testament to the power of quiet defiance. The neighborhood watched a silent jury, the weight of their gaze, a testament to the shifting tides. In the quiet of my home, I replayed the recording, the sound of her voice, a distant echo. I pondered the next step, the path that lay before me shrouded in uncertainty. Karen's demands were a fading memory, her power a relic of a time past. The police were a call away, a final note in the symphony of retribution. But for now, I held the power, wrapped in the quiet confidence of truth. The storm was passing, and in its wake, a new dawn awaited. The satisfaction of silence, that rarest of gifts, settled around me like a warm, protective cloak. Karen's screams, once the soundtrack of my afternoons, had been silenced, not by any miraculous change of heart on her part, but by the long arm of the law. The sun slid slowly across the sky, casting a golden hue that danced through the leaves, draping the world in a gentle, forgiving glow. My dog Rufus lay sprawled at my feet, his chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of a creature untroubled by the whims of human pettiness. I envied him that simplicity. It hadn't taken much to set things in motion. A few carefully chosen words delivered to the right ears had been enough to summon help from the chaos. I'd shown the officers the footage, that damning record of her tirades, her voice a relentless tide battering against the walls of my home. Necessary. Justice. Hidden in plain sight. Rufus shifted his tail, thumping softly against the ground. I reached down, absently scratching behind his ears, my fingers trailing through his thick fur. Comfort in the tangible, the real. Not that Karen would ever understand. I chuckled at the thought, a dry sound almost lost in the rustle of the breeze. Her demands had been ludicrous, a muzzle for a dog who rarely barked, whose only crime had been existence in her narrow world. Yet that world had shrunk considerably since the officers paid her a visit. Her indignation had crumpled beneath the weight of her own evidence, shouting laced with vitriol, her voice a weapon she wielded with reckless abandon. But the law does not take kindly to threats, nor to harassment. The irony tasted sweet. She who had fashioned herself as the enforcer of arbitrary rules now found herself bound by them. I had been patient, enduring her theatrics with a quiet resolve. Never once had I retaliated. Instead, I recorded. I documented. I built a case as solid as the bricks of the houses she so meticulously scrutinized. The officers had watched the videos in silence, their faces impassive, but their eyes betraying disbelief. They left with promises of restraining orders and perhaps more should her behavior persist. This neighborhood, my supposed haven, now felt a little less hostile. On the porch, I sipped my coffee, its warmth seeping into my bones. The future stretched before me, unmarred by her incessant demands. I imagined other homeowners would feel a similar relief, though none had dared confront her as directly. Fear is a powerful silencer. But not for me. I had stood my ground, shielded by my own integrity and a quiet determination. In the end, it was her own voice that had condemned her. A fitting justice. Rufus stirred again, and I followed his gaze to the street. For a moment I thought I saw her, a fleeting shadow. But no. Just a trick of the light. Her reign of tyranny was over, its echoes fading into the past. I breathed deeply, the air crisp and clean, untainted by conflict. The world seemed larger somehow, more open, more accepting. I was free to live to enjoy the peace I had fought for, not with words or confrontation, but with patience and a refusal to yield. It was a small victory, yet it felt immense, resonating through the quietude of my heart, a reminder that even the smallest of us can withstand the storm. The air felt different that morning. A strange calm settled over our neighborhood, as if the world itself knew a climax loomed. The sun slanted through tree branches, casting shadows like skeletal fingers across the road. I walked, slowly absorbing the moment, feeling the quiet power of the truth I carried. My dog trotted beside me, oblivious to the tension. His soft panting was a comforting rhythm, a counterpoint to the chaos Karen had unleashed. I felt the weight of the recording in my pocket, a digital sword ready to slice through the fabric of her tyranny. I passed the houses, their facades innocently cheerful, but behind each door, whispers and glances simmered. Karen's reign had left its mark. Her demands had been small tyrannies, each one a chisel strike against community spirit. Now I carried the chisel that would fracture her grip. Reaching the community center, I paused. This was the stage for our final act, the monthly HOA meeting, a theater of tension and politeness. But today, the script would change. Today, the audience would see behind the curtain. Inside the room buzzed with low conversations, eyes darting as I entered. Karen stood at the front, her presence commanding. Her smile was an iron gate locking away any dissent. But I had the key. I sat, my heart a drumbeat of resolve. The meeting unfolded predictably, each agenda item a pebble tossed into still water. Karen's voice a constant droning insistence, but there was a crack in her composure, a subtle tremor in her gaze. When it met mine, my turn came. I rose, feeling the weight of every eye. Words flowed, a river of calm inevitability. The recording played Karen's screams, a raw symphony of her own making. The room held its breath. The sound a revelation of truth clad in harsh reality. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Karen's eyes burned with disbelief, a queen deposed by her own folly. Her control unraveling, thread by thread. The room shifted, perspective realigned, a collective exhale, the lifting of a communal yoke. Someone murmured agreement, then another. The sound swelled, an ocean of voices reclaiming their space. I felt a warmth in my chest, a quiet satisfaction, not triumph but restoration. The world tilted back toward balance. Karen's departure was swift, the door closing behind her with a finality that echoed. The meeting continued, a ship righted after a storm. We spoke of future plans, voices rising in hopeful harmony. The air cleared, the shadows receding. Later, as I walked home, the neighborhood seemed brighter. The sun hung lower, casting a golden hue over everything. My dog pranced beside me, tail wagging. I breathed deeply, feeling the threads of community weave together once more. Karen had been a storm, but the community was resilient. Like a forest after a fire, it would grow back stronger. And I, a quiet guardian, would be there to tend it, ensuring the peace we had reclaimed flourished in the light of a new day.